On November 23rd, 1996, NASCAR did something it had never done before. They raced in Japan. Yes, you indeed heard that correctly. Japan. The American Motorsports NASCAR raced in Japan. Gameplay is from rFactor 2. I use two different mods for the gameplay, one for the track and one for the cars. Links to those will be in the description. The race was an exhibition race and took place at Suzuka, which has hosted the F1 Japanese Grand Prix since 1987. The race was set to take place on the 1.394 mile 8-turn east layout. Hiroshi Suzuki was the general manager for Suzuka Circuit. He showed up to the NASCAR offices unannounced and got a meeting with Bill France Jr. Bill France Jr. liked the idea, and NASCAR made the trip to Japan to take a look at the circuit, and NASCAR agreed to race at Suzuka at the conclusion of the 1996 season. Drivers were excited for the race, but many said they weren't looking forward to the travel, as it was around a 14-hour flight. People in Japan didn't really know what NASCAR was, but Japan has a rich history of racing, particularly with F1. F1 had hosted the Japanese Grand Prix at Suzuka since 1987, and in 1996, Japanese driver Yukoi Fadayama was taking part in the F1 championship. All the teams really came prepared for the race, and all the drivers really wanted to win the race, as it was the inaugural race at Suzuka, and that added extra prestige to it. One of the major differences with NASCAR that was unfamiliar to Japanese racing fans was the level of closeness the fans can have to the sport and the access to the drivers. Fans could watch the crews work on the cars in the garage area, unlike, say, F1, where the teams will even sometimes try to hide that kind of stuff from the other teams. So the race in 1996 was 100 laps or 140 miles. The race would be split up into two 50-lap segments. The top 10 from the first segment were then inverted into the second segment. There were 27 cars and 4 of the drivers were Japanese. They were Hideo Fukuyama, Kazutaru Wakita, Kiichi Toshiya, and Akiko Nakaya. Hideo Fukuyama said that the first time he drove the car, that the car was just ridiculous and not easy. Rusty Wallace qualified on pole, and Wallace led for most of the first segment before intentionally dropping back to 10th to ensure he would start first in the second segment. Jeff Gordon won the first segment. Gordon said he didn't care about the inversion, he just wanted to go hard. Hideo Fukuyama was running in the top 10 for a good part of the race, but with around 10 laps to go, he was hit in the rear bumper and wrecked by Wally Dallenbach Jr. Rusty Wallace ended up winning the race, and Jeff Gordon and Dale Earnhardt were side by side for second, with Earnhardt just edging Gordon out at the line. Toshiya finished 15th, Nakaya finished 18th, Wakita was 21st, and then Fukuyama was 22nd. NASCAR returned in 1997 to Suzuka. 1997 saw rain tires used by Cup cars for the first time in the modern era, as they were used for qualifying. Mark Martin qualified on pole. The same 4 Japanese drivers that took place in the race in 1996 took place in the 1997 event. Also racing in the event was Australian Jim Richards. The race featured 30 drivers. The race was 125 laps this time, or 175 miles, with no segments, unlike the first race. There was a multi-car wreck going into turn 1 on lap 1. Dale Earnhardt would crash just before lap 10 and would end up retiring from the event. Jim Richards was running second for a large part of the beginning of the race, despite never driving a NASCAR stock car. Mark Martin would lead for around the first 45 laps before handing it to Ricky Craven, who would hold it for the next 35. Mike Skinner would end up leading the remaining 23 laps and would get the win. Mark Martin led the most laps at 51 and finished second. Australian Jim Richards picked up 6th place. Keiichi Toshiya finished 11th. Hideo Fukuyama finished 21st. Akiko Nakaya finished 23rd, with Kazutaru Wakita finishing 25th. NASCAR 98, developed by Stormfront Studios and published by Electronic Arts, actually featured the Suzuka's E-Circuit. In 1998, NASCAR would return to Japan, but not to Suzuka. This time they would race at Twin Ring Motegi. Twin Ring Motegi is a 1.549 mile 4-turn oval with turns 3 and 4 tighter than turns 1 and 2, similar in shape to Darlington, but Twin Ring Motegi only has 10 degrees of banking in the corners. Twin Ring Motegi is the only oval track in Japan that is used for competitive racing. Fuji was originally intended to be a 2.5 mile banked oval, but those plans were abandoned and the track was eventually turned into a traditional road course. At the conclusion of the 1998 season, Twin Ring Motegi hosted the Coca-Cola 500 for NASCAR. This was a 201 lap, 500 kilometer race, or a 311.3 mile race. Jeremy Mayfield qualified on pole with an average speed of 158.799 miles per hour. Fukuyama, Toshiya, and Wakita returned from the 1997 race alongside Morihiro Nakagi. The race was notable for being the first race with Dale Earnhardt racing alongside his son Dale Earnhardt Jr. Jeff Gordon would take the lead on lap 2 and would continue to lead until Jeff Burton made the pass on lap 21. The lead would then be exchanged between several drivers until lap 55 when Mike Skinner got the lead, and he held it until lap 73. The lead would then continue to be swapped again between several drivers until Jeff Gordon retook the lead on lap 90, leading to lap 138, when Dale Earnhardt led for a lap before Mike Skinner took over the lead for the remaining 140 laps and held on for the win. Mike Skinner would win back-to-back races in Japan, and he led the most laps at 93 of the 201. The 22 lead changes was double the two races at Suzuka combined, which only featured 11, 4 in 96 and 7 in 1997. At the conclusion of the 1998 race, Mike Houghton said that because the contract was up, that the Cup Series would not be returning to Japan. Mike Houghton did also announce that the then Winston West Series, now currently the Arca Menard Series West, would race at Twin Ring Motegi in 1999. This race was later determined to be the Winston West season finale. Kevin Richards would win in 1999. This only lasted 1 year, though, due to high travel costs and low attendance. According to Racing Reference, the attendance for the races was 40,000 in 1996, 35,000 in 1997, and 41,000 in 1998. Hideo Fukuyama would later race in the Cup Series in America. He ran a total of 4 races between 2002 and 2003. He made his debut at Dover in 2002 for Haas Carter, but due to a transmission failure, he finished 39th. Fukuyama was the first Japanese driver to qualify for a NASCAR Cup points race. He also finished 43rd at Martinsville, and then in 2003 he finished 33rd at Las Vegas and 43rd at Sonoma. Fukuyama said it was a miracle that he got to race in the Cup Series, and that moment is his greatest pride. The Xfinity Series has raced in Canada and Mexico, and the Truck Series currently races in Canada at Canadian Tire. So now you've heard from me, and now I want to hear from you. What do you think about NASCAR racing in Japan? And do you think NASCAR should try and expand internationally? So drop a comment with what you think. Thanks for watching, and until next time, so long everybody. Bye.